Well, Chris, this is the kind of technology that was used in the period of the Ashcott Heath. I mean, they didn't have any metal at all. All of their tools were made of flint. It was a very wide-ranging toolkit, really, quite specialised. This blade is very sharp. You could use that like a draw knife, you know, you could pull it down the wood like this. But I think the key tools are the ones we've got here, these adhesives. These tools are used very much like this in the hand here, and they are surprisingly effective. I think the secret is to get the taper right from the tip and then work it further up.
With my knowledge of flint tools and Chris's bow making skills, we should make the perfect combination.
But it does give you quite nice refined trim. You need to get the feel of
the angle of the...
But you can't test a bow without arrows, so I've got to gather the materials to make these arrowheads fly.
One of the key things I'm going to need is some glue to attach the arrowhead to the shaft, and for that the best answer is pine resin. What I'm looking for are these dry areas here. That looks just like wood, but actually what I've got here is hardened resin. Take this stone tool and I'll just get that. You see there? You see that's resin, powdery resin, absolutely perfect for my needs. There's something really satisfying about this Stone Age technology. It's tremendously levelling. It's a grounding force. It reminds you where we all came from, and some of these resources are just marvellous. The smell of this stuff is fantastic. Oh, wonderful.
And for the arrow shafts, hazel.
What I'm looking for is a nice straight piece, roughly the right diameter to begin with. I'll just tear it off like that. This is how I've seen arrows collected in Africa. Just very simple, straightforward. Another nice one there. It's coming on a tree, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard work, but we've got quite a way down the process. I'm working on the back face of the bow, and while she was away I brought the shave, and I've been using that to reduce the layers on the back of the bow and take quite a bit of wood off actually. It's a very, very good tool.
Good tool, isn't it?
I've never used a tool like that in my life in stone, so I was quite impressed with what you can do with it.
And these tools, they're much slower than metal, aren't they?
Oh, you need more calories to use them, definitely.
Yeah.
Before I can get on with the arrows, I have to get a fire going, the Stone Age way, using a kit dating back 8,000 years.
The key item was this here. This is iron porites, and from this, with their flint, they could strike small dull red sparks with which they could start their fire.
Their tinder was made from horse's hoof fungus, the same species I'd seen in the British Museum.
Because the sparks we get from the iron porites are so cool, the tinder has to be very carefully prepared. And to do that, take a flint blade like this and scrape the tinder until you get like a mass of cotton wool-like fibres. The next job is to strike the spark onto the tinder, and this isn't easy, and the sparks are very small and very few and far between, so it takes normally a few minutes. And of course, eventually one lands in the right place and the tinder catches light like this. Take another piece of this fungus, which I will ignite now from this little piece here. Just blow on that. Burns very hot. And I put that in there while I can just about hold it. It's getting very hot now. And now there we have flame. One of the key things about primitive arrows is accuracy, and accuracy is very much a function of straightness. And that doesn't look too bad, but actually when you look down it you can see it's all higgledy-piggledy waves all over the shop. And the process is to heat the arrow shaft over the fire and then to straighten out the areas where it's bent. This one was just the same as the last one a few minutes ago, and gradually now I'm starting to straighten it out. And then once it's straight, I want to dry these stems off, and then I can scrape them down a little bit more and then sand them. It's a lot of work, but well worth it.
Sitting here getting to grips with these Stone Age techniques makes me realise how resourceful our ancestors were. The forest was both their DIY store and their supermarket.
Bit of sandstone, piece of leather, and this is our abrasive paper. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's fantastic, smooth. I could probably use the same process on the bow.
Oh, I thought you might say that.
I'll give it a try anyway.
Hey. Your bow's useless without the arrows. I'm trying to use this very thin tool to widen the notch. I'm going to make some adhesive here to affix the arrowhead in place. The first thing I've got is some charcoal. I'm going to grind it up nice and fine. And now I've got the resin here that we collected. Close to the fire where it can warm up. It's beginning to melt really nicely. And what I do now is start to mix that carefully in with the charcoal. And the charcoal strengthens the resin. Without the charcoal, the resin when it hardens is very brittle. It's almost like glass actually. Cools off very quickly. That's just the first fixing. What I need now is to bind that arrowhead in place and then apply some more glue. So I've got a really firm fixing. Now our ancestors could have used a lot of different fibres for this purpose, but one of the things we know they did from the archaeological record, one of the fibres they used was this, the fibres from a stinging nettle. And that's what I'm going to use. That's the point fixed. Now for the fletchings.
These are the leg tendons from a red deer. They can be turned into fine fibres, which I'm going to use to attach the fletchings on the arrows. But to produce these sinew fibres, I first have to pound them.
Sinew fibres contain their own natural glue. Now I'm going to carry out a bit of an experiment. In Africa I've seen the Hadza use the bulb of a plant. They chew it up and spit it onto the arrow shaft as a glue. And I've also come across references in Britain to bluebell bulbs having been used to make a similar glue. Now these are poisonous, so I wouldn't recommend you do what I'm doing, but I'm going to chew a couple of these bulbs up and spit them on here and see if they act as a glue. I've got a good hunch that they will. Very sticky, very much like what I've seen the Hadza using. That's
It's really quite surprisingly sticky. Right, let's see how we go on. The first one down on there. Pull that good and tight. Another bit of sinew for binding. Fiddly old business, this. Stick those in place. And at the top there. Definitely works. That's amazing. Feathers are magical things, you know. Amongst a lot of native people, they had tremendous significance because they go higher in the world than most of us are able to. Therefore, came closer to God than the rest of us. And when it comes to jobs like this, the magic of their physical structure, which enables you to separate the veins like this, and then gently brush them back together, and they connect and hook onto each other again, is just fantastic. All we need now is the bow.
Okay, yeah, it is just a little bit stiff there, Ray. Can you feel the stiffness in the middle of the bow?
This is at the crucial stage of the bow making now. Someone once described a bow as a stick that was 9/10 broken. All the magic is in that last little bit that you leave there. And as he pulls the bow, it needs to flex equally in all places on either side. If one area is weak or stiff, the load isn't evenly distributed, and that will tend to lead to the bow breaking.
Oh yeah.
Well, Chris, the thing that bothers me is that we've got a lot of stress involved and we've got no sapwood.
Yeah.
There is a very good chance, isn't there, that this could break. After all, the one we saw in the museum was broken.
Broken, yeah, I know. It's an experiment, and we've said this right from the offset. I've, been prepared to give it a go, the same as you. Let's just hope that it hangs together. Hopefully they did get some use out of the bow before it broke. Let's be positive.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right then, Chris, what's the target?
Clump of ferns down there.
All right, you're on.
Good shot.
Lovely. Shoots hard and fast, that does.
That's brilliant. I'm very impressed. Well, we get dinner with it, that's for sure.
Well, of course, that's what it meant. That's what it meant to the original maker. This wasn't a thing for recreation or a toy. This was a thing to stop the hungry child from crying.
Yeah.
It really is a forerunner of the longbow of the medieval period, isn't it? It's just a few thousand years later, our whole nation stood behind these pieces of yew.
And relied on that very weapon.